Okay.
We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jay Carpenter. I'm the founder of Decentralized Blockchain. You guys can stay there, you're fine. So it is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, and this is our first monthly meetup of the year. And the intention of tonight is kind of look back at 2019, look ahead at not only 2020, but also beyond that, and kind of identify a few points that might be of interest for people to follow. And so we'll get into that presentation at some point, but we've got some awesome people here tonight, and I want to kind of introduce some folks. It's a small but very powerful group, so delighted that you're here. I would like to say a few things about the meetups. First of all, we are in a big warehouse. We have no electricity other than generator electricity. We have limited bathroom facilities. If you need to use a full bathroom, see Eileen, and she can take you next door to a full bathroom. So, I would like to say that Desert Blockchain is, you can become a citizen of Desert Blockchain, and I'm posting some links on that. It's basically $10 a month. We're going to be building up that program, but just in case you don't know, we have offered for citizens some incredible events last year. You got a free pass to DesTech, which included a dinner with Steve Wozniak. I think it was in December. I drove a Ferrari for free at Wild Horse Pass Raceway, which was also available for blockchain citizens. You could have driven a Lamborghini or a McLaren or whatever, just amazing. We're offering a 20% discount on the Hyperledger Global Forum, which is coming up in March. So please consider becoming a Desert Blockchain citizen. This is designed to be funded by the community for the community. So, yeah. In addition to the monthly meetings, we also are having regular Saturday afternoon hack sessions. This Saturday afternoon, file cooling. So stay tuned for stuff about that. And basically, that's about all I have to say for now. I would like to kind of go around and introduce everybody so that you know here what people are interested in, and share our expertise. So, Chad, why don't you go ahead and start, since you're in.
Chad Islander, I'm the member of Desert Blockchain.
Yep.
And avidly interested in decentralization and web technologies. And so you're using Thursdays and Saturdays, hacking away with Jay and Niles on projects. And so, yeah, I work at CDSL in financial architecture.
Sorry, where do you work?
At CDSL over here in Scottsdale. I do financial architecture for pharmacy. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And Chad has been instrumental in setting up something called FRED, which is a free registry for enum and domains. It's basically, we now have the ability, and this has been out for a while, it's open source, but we could recreate everything that ICANN has. So we could create our entire DNS system using FRED. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah. So Niles.
I put a lot of the Saturday events. I get that kind of bare bones beginners. Also some programming. I work at a company called different little things like that.
Niles is amazing. If you want to know about any Linux distribution, Niles is your go-to person. So he's Really, really impressive.
Are we allowed to talk about religion here?
Danger zone.
That's right. He's a big fan of Arch, so
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, as gangsters are.
We are safe.
we are safe because he can't install it.
Yeah, just don't try to make it hard.
Yeah. Well, you've got Manjaro up and running. Yeah, I use Debian.
Debian.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Oh, stop.
Uh-oh, we are into religion now. Okay, Dave Fry, please introduce yourself. And
Dave, I'm the Chief Financial Strategist for Control. Control, we're building out our DLT platform, Slow, centralized DLT data structure on two trees.
I'm going to do a little screen sharing, Dave, so that we can talk about, let's see. Yeah, there we go.
I can talk a little bit about it, but don't gang up on me too much. My job is mostly business development, not software engineering, so I apologize in advance for my answers that are going to be, hey, check out our website. But this is my second meeting here. Excited to find the community that I've been looking for the past year, to be honest. So this is nice. This is who I want to be talking to passionate people about their project.
Yeah, I will put up, this is, let's see, oh, I wonder. That's why things are a little wacky.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a session where Topper Bowers spoke on the weekly update call at the Protocol Labs and IPFS group, and he takes about a 30-minute time span to step through Tupelo, and that was on September 2nd, 2019, and this is a really good explanation of what the project is and the dimensions of it and so forth. So if you're interested in finding out more about Tupelo, I'd direct you to this video recording. So cool. Anything else you want to say, Dave?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Happy to be here, meeting everybody. We're looking for developers for our platform. To build something in a decentralized manner on a new platform using a unique data structure. Love to talk to you.
Cool. And you're welcome to post your contact information and, you know, whatever positions you're looking for, you can do that on the meetup page. So, okay, cool. Randy.
My name's Randy, and lived here in the Valley for 20 years. The accounting, IT, healthcare industry. Recently, when I really learned about blockchain and distributed ledger technology, decided I wanted to learn as much as I can. So I actually left my job, kind of doing some side consulting on my own, and just trying to absorb as much as I can to learn about projects. So I've been coming to these meetings probably around two years now with Jay. So I made the whole circuit in Grand Canyon and out to UAE.
Yeah.
So just fascinated by all the opportunities and the things that are happening. Good to meet several of you. I've worked for at least learn with you. Friday breaks. I usually come on Saturday afternoon.
Cool. Scott?
Yeah, I'm Scott. As far as decentralization interest work goes, I've been a minor contributor to Monero for the past 3 years. Basically, particularly interested in the privacy part of
You mind kind of introducing Monero for those that might not know anything about it?
So in like sentence, Monero is like Bitcoin, but private essentially. So Bitcoin, everything is an open ledger. Anyone open for anyone to look at. You can give money that you just quickly easily backtrace and like, oh, this person has 100 Bitcoins. I think I'm going to, pull them hostage or mug them, whatever. So Monero is basically probably some cryptography in order to mask the amount that you sent, how much you hold, where you send it, etc.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Mark.
Good evening, Mark Goldstein. I have a research and consulting firm, International Research Center, for almost 28 years. Virtual teams for projects, 15 people or so, peer participants in my projects. Everything's technology, a lot of work in broadband, IoT in smart city, edge computing these days. I'm active in the state policy ecosystem. So I'm on the board and executive committee of the Tech Council and write some of the public policy stuff on an annual basis. I write all the state and federal things on policy.
Here is the latest public
This
policy.
is the annual guide. It's on the Tech Council site, actechcouncil.org. And I've run the Arizona Telecom Innovation Council, broadband oriented, active with the Arizona Energy Consortium, Bioindustry Association, so really all the tech groups. I had engineering and engineering management group. I had millennium. And among other things, I published an extensive what's going on. And do you want me to talk about this Saturday?
Yes, please. No, go ahead and you can talk about it.
Saturday, for example, there'll be a couple of things. There'll be Arizona SciTech Festival, and it's not being Connect to STEM, which will be about 10,000 people down 6th Street and Van Buren. All sorts of exhibits and STEM and fun. At the same time, over at UAT, there'll be the 5th annual IoT Dev Fest, which is also a good way to spend a Saturday. I have godchildren, so sometimes I go to IoT Dev Fest. So I do have some literature on this STEM stuff, IoT Dev Fest. And in the smart city world, I don't know if ASU with the Smart Region Summit they had for weekends in November, and I'm co-producing a Smart Region Center event in March. And I have some links for that.
Yeah, cool. And then you've got you're involved with a cloud computing event.
Sorry?
You're involved with a cloud computing event. Is that too early to talk about that?
ASU, like Richard said, there's an AWS funded smart city cloud initiative. ASU is actually building a greenfield smart community at the edge of campus. And of course, Bill Gates is building an enormous smart city from scratch west of the 2 property purchases. I think the first is targeted at 80,000 residents. Smart city.
Yeah, lots going on. And then ASU is building like an innovation center in Mesa as well, correct?
Yeah, I don't know much about that. Yes.
Yeah. So cool.
I mostly paid attention to Tempe, where there are a couple of hundred acres going into this new smart community. And there, of course, Sky Song is its own kind of community up the street, where they're building a multi-generational apartment complex and concept that is innovative in how people later in life can innovate.
Let's not use the term later in life, Mark.
Right.
Let's call them lifelong learners. How's that?
But aging in place is the concept. Stay in your home.
So,
Possible with telemedicine and smart
Howdy. Come on in.
Kidney family stuff over there.
Anyway, glad to share these flyers or stuff on this one.
Yeah.
My calendar.
Welcome to Desert Blockchain Camp. You're welcome to some pizza and some drinks and everything. We're just kind of going around introducing ourselves, and this is being recorded and so forth. So would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what you're interested in here?
My name is Thomas, and I have three names that I so right now I'm doing partner with some of my old colleagues back in Hong Kong. So we're doing some projects for time machine learning AI mastery, and then also other projects with blockchain technology, say
STO being
it looks like security token.
okay.
Yeah, just like IPO.
Okay, got it. Cool, awesome. Is this your first time at Desert Blockchain Camp?
Yeah, I think I was in your section when back in
At you, yeah.
This is the first time here, so I'm going on for 10 minutes.
So you get the entire tour. Oh, good. I'm glad you could find us. So cool. A BIC. That's a good lead-in for a BIC.
Segue. AI.
Yeah.
Oh. So my name's Vic. A little background on me. I studied computer science, but I do a lot of wearables now, and really wanting to help people. And with wearables data, that being highly private information, and cloud providers, third parties, I think, are really where data can be abused the most, and when great power, great responsibility, and looking at decentralized systems to be able to take decentralized systems are ways of codifying social norms and social structures in ways that can't be circumvented by any individual property, and looking at math and those coded in social structures as being the only thing that can be trusted with that kind of data that can really infer even potentially. So that's why I'm excited about this space, excited about IPFS and distributed storage and hosting of this data. I'm excited. There's been a lot of really cool initiatives. There used to be computes, which would be kind of like if IPFS was S3 buckets on Amazon, so just like raw file storage, they would be more like an EC2, so just like a way of computing in a decentralized way, also helpful, and just general ways to, yeah, distribute the load on these digital systems that are so important to us.
So some of us have been going to decentralized events, Decentralized Web Summit. In July, Abik and Niles and Chad and I and a few other folks went to the D-Web camp, which was about an hour south of San Francisco on the Pacific Ocean, which was really, really cool. It was about 400 people, 400 of the people that invented the internet and are inventing what's next. And Abik is famous for the Abik kick. Because so he impressed Wendy Hanamura of the Internet Archive with the Abik kick. So anyway.
For anyone who doesn't know how already, but the Internet Archive really evangelizes what people know. Fantastic Mother, she gave me her son's jacket because I was cold. Just all around a nice person. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, she's amazing. And Mr. Niles won the first group contest, and he's actually wearing the hat that he won in that contest. Yeah. So anyway, cool. Jose, yes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not as cool as most people that I see here. Yeah, in my brain, I am a project manager, but in my heart, I'm a developer and systems administrator. That's what I I've been doing projects, all sorts of projects, corporate America, corporate Brazil, where I'm from. Now that my last project ended, I'm looking for the new stuff. And while I'm working on getting my new engagement, I'm spending time with my granddaughter, 1 year old.
Cool.
Actually, yeah, 1 year and 2 months this Friday. Thank you.
Nice.
Um,
That's my birthday,
oh, cool.
the 24th.
Yeah, cool.
So.
Talking about religion, I run Manjaro, my
Aha.
disease.
Aha.
Aha. KD plasma, 2 of them, and red poison on my development. And that's me. That's
Cool.
Here.
Thanks. I didn't know that you were into the esoteric Linux distributions, which is really cool. You've found your tribe here, so especially with Niles.
Yeah, it's
So.
not a coincidence that
Yeah. So. And in the back we have Eileen Kane. Eileen, you want to say a little bit about what you're up to and interested in, and so forth. Cool. And Eileen helps out with the Desert Blockchain events and doing the social media and a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. So,
cool. Just one more thing about myself, if I may.
Sure, absolutely.
Last year and in 2018, I spent long hours at the public school in downtown Phoenix, teaching 5th graders programming in Scratch.
Nice. Awesome. Are you interested in like having some workshops from time to time? Yes, like maybe here, whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. And Scratch is the best programming language ever.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we try to do as much, or at least I try to do as much as possible on Raspberry Pis. And of course, Scratch comes, you know, with the Raspberry Pis. So definitely love to explore that with you. So cool. Yep. All right. Anything else? Anything anyone would like to announce or say or whatever? Okay, let's go ahead and get into the presentation, and I'll do a little screen sharing here. Let's see. I think this is it. Okay. So let's move this down. Okay, so this is just a little something I put together to kick off a conversation about sort of looking back at 2019 as well as looking ahead at 2020. And let's just kind of, I'd like to go around the room and ask people what you thought were the top 3 events or developments or things that you saw in 2019 that sort of highlighted 2019 for you. And I'm gonna start. I'll start things off. In my view, Libra was far and away #1. And Libra, if you don't know, is the cryptocurrency that's being created by a consortium of companies, primarily led by Facebook. And there's been a lot of press lately that talks about Libra basically being a dead project. Actually, I think that I don't think it's dead by any means. And we'll turn it over to Chad in a minute here who can show us a little bit of the Libra testnet. But even if Libra dies, it's my understanding that Binance, which is a phenomenal story if you're not familiar with it, probably one of the fastest growing, most successful startups ever, they have basically forked Libra and will push it forward even if the Facebook consortium fails. The other interesting thing about Libra is they've actually, let's say, taken inspiration from some of the constructs with IPFS, like libp2p, and you know, maybe some other things. I'm not totally sure, but libp2p, if you're not familiar with it, is really, really cool. With IPFS in terms of a communication protocol that basically spans, as far as I can tell, just about every other protocol. But Libra's taken inspiration, let's say, with that. But the biggest thing that I think Libra signifies is a switch from cryptocurrency and decentralization being looked upon as like a hacker thing. So, you know, Bitcoin, all the other projects, I think, have been viewed in kind of the hacker realm. And Libra, in my mind, moved the whole cryptocurrency space and decentralized space into the enterprise realm and the institution realm. And the other thing that it did is it got the attention, I would say, of the policymakers around the world. And right now they're kind of in a, you know, a knee-jerk, hey, we got to stop this, we got to control it, all that sort of thing, as you might have seen in the congressional hearings with Mark Zuckerberg. But it sparked some of our Congress folks to fly over to Switzerland, as well as some other places, and say, hey, what are you people doing to, you know, regulate this? And I would say that the Libra announcement basically shook the policymakers as well as other constructs by the collar and said, hey, this is real. It's going to be very, very impactful, if not disruptive. So that's one of the reasons that I think that Libra is, in my view, is the #1 development in 2019. And so anyway, that's my view, and Chad can talk about it in a little bit more detail and show you the test net in a moment. The other thing about Libra is technically and from the documents, it seems to be really, really well done. And Chad can talk about that a little bit as well. But, you know, the other thing is I put Walmart and Microsoft, and they're, you know, they're interchangeable in my mind, again, from the enterprise side of things because of their embracing of blockchain. And in particular, Microsoft seems to be really, really strong with blockchain. And they announced that you can actually, they've got a service, and I haven't explored it, but from the announcement, you can actually start to create your own crypto via the Microsoft platform, which I think is really revolutionary. It would almost be like putting cryptocurrency for small to medium-sized companies, maybe larger, like creating your own rewards system. So for your customers, and Walmart is requiring their food suppliers to use their blockchain for tracking various food supply pieces. So, Chad, you want to talk about Libra a little bit, and then we'll go around the room and see if there's any other areas of. Just if you could just talk about Libra first, and then talk about what you saw as key in decentralization in 2019.
Their testnet up, and
You want me to switch over to that?
if you guys want to see that, we can do a demo of it probably after.
Okay.
But I think it's an interesting project to follow in a couple senses because it's a stable point, and it's unique in that it solves a couple problems in crypto space. Trying hasn't solved yet. So I think it's something to watch, and it's Facebook. So they definitely have the longevity and the team behind it, regardless of kind of how the politics shake out around it. And so as far as the decentralization space, when Jay was talking, it kind of this last year, for what I noticed was kind of the different parts of what is now current computing come together and make the decentralized projects much more accessible than they once were. Kind of crypto's moving to the cloud space and how that's going to shake out with enterprise moving to the cloud. It kind of makes this technology sphere that I was looking at, crypto being a separate entity away from current technologies to now kind of just one developed space. And they can all now kind of play together in an unforeseen way. But I can do a lot of it in the cloud now where I couldn't last year. And so where it shakes out this next year, what I'm really interested in is as the platforms like Microsoft platform gives enterprises accessibility to crypto type assets, how that will kind of get integrated in enterprise structure and stuff, and as well as the hyperledger thing really impressed me this year with Marsh. I think we get an opportunity to go to that next month here. I think that'd be a good one to go to. They're doing a lot of innovative things that there's almost any corporation should be using something like that, just for business processes at least. So that's kind of like my take on this last year.
Yeah, our intention is in February 26th, to have a Hyperledger session that will sort of tee up the Hyperledger Global Conference that will be in downtown Phoenix, March 3rd through the 6th. So, yeah, cool. Okay, who else? Any 2019 developments that we haven't talked about that anybody thinks are significant?
Something I found.
Go ahead.
Mine's really quick. It's just there's a website that hosts competitions for just building projects on hackster.io that I partaken in, and IOTA hosted a competition. And that was interesting to see. I started getting into it after the competition had finished, but it was really cool to see, a decentralized system, especially one that's not using blockchain, but ready to take that step to actually engage developers and be confident enough to do that. I'm not keeping up too much, but I don't know if they're past their testnet or where they're at, but we'll see.
So, IOTA, are you skilled in that? Have you built anything?
Not personally, but the fact that they could expect normal people to build stuff in it impressed me. So I didn't partake in that one, but if anyone else is interested, I would love to learn and share that knowledge. It'd be useful to others.
Cool. So there's a lady at ASU, I'm going to say Timmy, but it's not really like Timmy. She is in the space department for ASU, and she sent me a link to a session over in Germany, and there was a woman from IOTA there, and they're actually looking to create a tracking or some sort of like IoT in space for satellites and so forth, and be able to not only track debris in space, but also have satellites that can maneuver around that debris. So
dynamically be aware of each other.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. So anyway, what else? One thing that I skipped was the testnet introduction for Filecoin, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Last year.
Yeah, December 11th. So yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I'll try to. Autonomous vehicles, I talk about them in electric vehicles in parallel topics a lot, but last year we hit the first level 4 autonomy without backup drivers. Here
Really?
With Waymo, 2 of their kind of alpha and beta programs were driving passengers fully autonomous Valley Metro employees and their families in Phoenix, and a different cadre in Chandler. So there are people that had, level 4 autonomy 6 years out from now. But it literally happened in Arizona last year, probably some other places. So kind of see that as a watershed moment. Really hope the current Bolt, an electric car that was 7 years old, lasts long enough. Then wireless, it's hard to know where to start. I mean, 5G is so buzzy, and that's great, and there's a lot of reasons 5G will be important. But last year, we were the first 3 dozen deployments in like 18 different countries of arguably 5G. But beyond that, there's Bluetooth 5, there's low power WAN networks, there's Wi-Fi 6 advances in the Wi-Fi family. There's 2 new unlicensed or light licensed spectrums coming online at 3.5 gig or something called CBRS, Citizen Band Radio Services. And in the old TV white spaces, there's very interesting wireless capability that can go non-line of sight, so it can go over terrain, and thus it can go about 10 kilometers, 6 miles today, possibly 10 times that measure. So I do a lot of rural broadband work, something that's non-line of sight. It's very critical. And then just let me briefly explain what I mean by light regulation. So you have 3.5 gigahertz for CBRS. You have a whole bunch of frequencies for white space television. And you have to check with a geo server to get an assigned frequency to use. And others may have priority over you, military radar, that kind of stuff. Those for example. But the odds are you'll always find a frequency to use for free. And so it's not truly unlicensed, but since you can just go and check out a frequency, probably and it's from a geo server, some charge, I call it light regulation. So an absolute explosion of wireless, both spectrum and technology. And for vehicles, there's something called V2X, vehicle to vehicle infrastructure pedestrian. And that will likely happen more on cellular frequencies, but there is a dedicated 9 gigahertz use for that. That's just all kind of blossom. And I saw that in 2019 really come to the fore in some of my work and interests.
Mm-hmm. And might be of interest to some people. The Federal Communications Commission is going to be having a little town hall thing on the
They're
20th.
having 7 meetings in Arizona, but they're at the end of this month, and I can provide that information. There's one in Phoenix, and they're about an hour-and-a-half workshop, and they're oddly positioned. I mean, they talk about hearing your voice and a bit about broadband, but they're also talking about scams and telephone telemarketing and blocking that. We're talking about all sorts of things they think of consumer interest. So it's more a consumer interest FCC workshop. And for me, it's kind of not the stuff I want to talk about. The FCC mostly. But there are 7 workshops in and around that. So,
yeah, cool. Awesome.
I can post that to the.
Yeah, you can put that right on the meetup. That'd be cool. Niles, yes.
I think that one thing that a lot of people overlook, about the Web 3.0, which is long-standing projects like at Speed Hub have been around for years. And so we talk about Mastodon, huge surge in users. You don't have Mastodon, like a Twitter alternative, just huge area. That need a Reddit alternative, like some activity. They recently was 0.5 officially out of beta. This is under the office users for a while. We're trying to keep direction. Pixel Fed's got keeping users. Hubzilla to buy Grandsoft for like decentralized, maybe some users. A whole bunch of products like that, as well as products like the project from Hero, and they're still there's a whole ton of technical side which is still blockchain, which is constantly moving ahead inside the decentralization. You brought up Wi-Fi, the D-Web conference in Toronto. Libre Magic has been doing a lot of development since then. Which are projects like interesting in your area of work.
Yeah, I think Matrix is getting some momentum as well.
Yeah,
There's at least one that OMS here.
you usually see like also like you can see like less products using like Slack, you see more Matrix or concept. If you're not fully central, federated, still working pretty well.
Towards that end, I think even like the French government, I think February 2019, that they were adopting part of their government communications.
Cool.
It's definitely getting a lot of recognition. Maybe not necessarily.
Yeah, my sense is that 2019 introduced kind of a heightened interest and sensitivity to also all of our data, breaches and privacy and control of our data and so forth. I mean, it's kind of slowly been rising on the radar, but I think 2019.
Well, 2019 was the year that California really, made the whole U.S. wake up to the kind of EU data protection stuff. Because if you can't do business in California, in the U.S., tends to be like with pollution standards. California sets a standard, and then everyone says, "Oh shit," it has to comply with California, even if their own states, the other 49 states, aren't there. So 2019 was really the year that the GDRP in Europe came home to roost with the California.
Sorry, GDPR.
Oh, sorry.
GDPR.
Yeah.
I get data dyslexic around that too. So
That was my last project. Yeah.
cool.
GDPR, CCPA, LGBT,
Right.
everything. Yeah.
Whole alphabet soup. Randy.
So I wrote down a list here of some. Caveat this list that some are decentralized in nature, but maybe on the fringe. And I think we'll look at 2019 as a seminal year for several different industries. But I want to key on what you said, Libra. I think Libra was the wake-up call, and you said policymakers. I want to call it governments worldwide. Recognize now that digital currencies are not going to go away. Now, not necessarily cryptocurrencies in a lot of cases, because most of these governments are going to have a centralized digital currency that they control, and that's inevitable, and we can't escape from that. However, these cryptocurrencies are still going to exist in some form or fashion. I really see that 2019 was the year, even though a lot of people say that most projects have failed. I disagree. I think that some of them were dormant for a while and have finally started to blossom. And I'm going to give you an example. I think the ERC20 platform that Ethereum created has now established a whole new second layer and even third layer of all kinds of different projects that are now borrowing and using and really starting to gel with them. So I think we're going to see some, we can name some of them. Chainlink is one really good example that I'm noticing. There's several others. But I just think that 2019 will be that year that we'll remember that some of these projects finally figure out a way to start working together rather than trying to overtake one another. And some will still fail. And then two other industries I think that we're going to look back, not necessarily in a decentralized manner. However, the longer time goes on, more decentralized, the applications that help these industries they're going to present themselves. And I think one is electric and solar power. I really believe Tesla's finally become part of the mainstream, and guided cars, self-driving autonomous cars. That whole concept, I think, is going to take off from a point that, and in conjunction with that, I think 2019 was the commercialization and birth of the space industry. And I think we're going to realize how huge the things that were accomplished in 2019. I mean, there were four, and even the one that Boeing tried to do and failed, they were still a commercial entity sending something up and trying, you know, not just satellites. I mean, that's important. I mean, that really has accelerated the advancement of globalism on this planet, satellites, but sending things out to space, and theirs didn't make it to the International Space Station, but SpaceX and Virgin Galactic were
Starlink.
successful in multiple activities. I think we're going to look back and realize that 2019 now. So as we go further, a decentralized platform of being able to communicate systems that are generated and made from that concept, and I'm going to merge the two. Eventually, we're going to get electric space and or solar space travel. That's where it eventually has to go. Because if you're going to send a spaceship out into space, why would you want to try to refuel it by any resource on any other planet? The big yellow ball in the sky is the source that's going to fuel space travel in the future. And I think so. Those two industries, I think, are eventually going to come together in a way that change the history of man.
Yeah.
And the other energy, they talk about DER, distributed energy resources. So it's not just a generation, it's a storage.
Yeah.
And so the great banks of Sinclair or lithium-ion batteries or whatever the next good chemistries will be coming on, a little residential, but also a lot of grid storage, makes that solar stretch into the most profitable times.
And we're already seeing transition. I mean, Phoenix metropolitan area, we are the fastest adoption of solar energy on the grid.
We closed down almost the largest coal-fired plant on the planet, Navajo generating station.
Yeah, I'd like to make, does that complete what you, okay. So there's 2 points that you bring up, Randy, that I'd like to elaborate on. Number one, let's go with the autonomous vehicles, because usually when I think of autonomous vehicle, I think of this one vehicle that's able to see and understand and navigate the road and everything. But what really I think is exciting is imagine if all the vehicles on the road started to act and exchange information with one another. Now I think you get something that works, because if, you know, my vehicle can get sensor and data from all the other vehicles around it, now I think we've got something that can actually navigate, you know, space and all the chaos that we encounter in the real world. And I think that blockchain and decentralized constructs will help usher that in, because you've got this trusted fabric, if you will, of data and communication and so forth. So that's you know, an additional thought. And that kind of bleeds into the 2020 preview and so forth. But the other thing in the policymaker realm is the statements by the president of China, Xi Jinping, if I pronounce his name almost at least somewhat correctly. That was a major announcement in my view, and you know, that dovetails with the transition from the hacker realm to the enterprise realm, and now you've got the nation state realm, and that's major league in my view. So
Just one more thing regarding to 2019. Everybody saw the transformation of two dinosaurs. One, the biggest dinosaur, IBM, they acquired Red Hat.
mm-hmm.
So that's a completely,
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. So it's changing somehow the paradigm. The even bigger paradigm shift I saw from Microsoft, the way that they are adopting open source, starting with their acquisition of GitHub last year, which for some is controversial. They are not necessarily warm and fuzzy about that because some may think that Microsoft is doing that to take over open source. But on the other hand, they have adopted open source big style. Microsoft Teams now runs on Linux as well. They have Edge now built on the Chromium engine. And there is some speculation that the next version of Microsoft Windows will run on the Linux kernel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full circle, huh? You'd expect to use this, right?
No, it's not the Microsoft that our parents grew up with.
Yeah.
You think full circle.
One thing I would like to mention
Sure.
also,
Go ahead, Tom.
it might not be just 2019. So about the machine learning, they talk about decentralized machine learning speculation on Google, right? So I think that's a trend, right? When the hardware infrastructure already, 5G, whatever, Wi-Fi, new technology, so they have to adapt to the technology. Software-wise, they have to go this trend, decentralized. So there's a way that you talk about even like your smartphone will do your own machine learning. But from whole world, all the smartphones will try to sync up together from each other. This is an amazing story.
Yeah.
And that's the evolution of a phone that can just program or radio different frequencies and find blind spots. It's a software-defined radio, but it's really with the AI, much smarter, more agile AI integration.
Yeah, and you can make the phones really more personalized for yourself. But it's end up like the machine can learn from each other also. That's getting smarter, but your data will not be analyzed for privacy.
Awesome. So thank you, Tom. That leads into actually what Jose said and what Tom is saying leads into back to 2020 and back to the let's see. Okay, cool. So that, let me go back to the share. That does lead, whoops, let's do this. And so, getting into, let's see. Okay, 2020. First of all, here's a Deloitte report on kind of a summary of blockchain for 2019. It's more like categories and so forth, but it is kind of interesting. So let's get into 2020, because Tom, what you're talking about, Jose, what you're talking about in terms of data and so forth, and Microsoft, particularly buying GitHub, in my view, touches upon decentralized identity. I think the GitHub purchase was about identity. I think the purchase of LinkedIn by Microsoft is also about identity. And you know, what you're talking about in terms of data privacy and all that sort of thing. And you know, if you can imagine having all the smartphones in the world sort of meshed together and working together, that would be amazing. But that also needs some sort of workable identity structure so that you can control what do you want to, you know, what are the boundaries of how do you want to participate in that mesh network. So in my view, the biggest piece that there is to solve is decentralized identity. And the huge companies are working on that. Then the next thing is decentralized governance, and then non-proof of work consensus. And in my view, these three things work together. And the first piece, if there was a workable, viable, decentralized identity construct, then that would open up a workable, viable, decentralized governance ecosystem and constructs, which would then open up a workable non-proof of work consensus mechanism. So in my view, these three things kind of dance together, and maybe it's not going to be in 2020, but you know, 2020 and beyond, just having thought about it a little bit, these are the three things that I think are the real, let's say, gatekeepers or points of friction or hurdles to get over in order to really open up the promise of this thing called blockchain and decentralization and distributed ledger technology, basically, which has kind of, I would say, people have gotten disillusioned, or they're kind of coming down from the hype cycle on this whole thing. So yeah, go ahead, Abik.
So I like you're right about each one being predicated on like solving the other one in an actionable enough way to be able to move on. For decentralized identity, I put decentralized Oracle systems as kind of something to be worked on before you can get identity, because identity is kind of saying something about the world. So with a lot of blockchain structures to say, oh, if you lose your private key, it's not like you lose your credit card, you can call the credit card company, and then they can identify that you're a real person, and sort of bridging that physical digital gap being kind of fundamental for making effective decentralized identity constructs. Would you agree with that sentiment? Or
I totally agree. I totally agree with that, and I'm going to try something out on you guys, which I've been kind of thinking about, and you're going to get the first cut at this. I'm going to use this whiteboard, but so I think what you're talking about fits into reputation. So that the whole key to an oracle, how do we tie the real world into digital decentralized blockchain, becomes a matter of trust applied to us as individuals, basically putting our judgment into the whole system. Okay? Does that kind of create what you're talking about?
It's like dynamically acknowledging the level of trust that you are putting in every single aspect.
Right. So, and this also touches upon artificial intelligence. Okay? And it touches upon two categories. Okay? So there's human feeling. This touches upon artificial intelligence, the whole user model for how do we get adoption of cryptocurrency, because there's a big gap between these two. And this is in addition to identity, this in my view is the centerpiece. Because we've got all these passwords, which passwords are machine friendly, but they're not human friendly. And they're not secure because we, I scores outside of secure, but I might not change my password as often.
It's still be a yes, that's what you want.
No, I'm not. Zero.
Microsoft last year, kind of, there was a 90-day copy.
Yeah. But so human friendly versus machine friendly, and with AI, we try to assume that can do many of the things that the human friendly side. So consider this: machines are relationship. Humans are relationship. Significant. So what do I mean by that? To a machine, so you've got a string of numbers. Let's say a machine is looking at this string. Okay. To a machine, there's no significance to that string, right? To a human, especially people from Asia, because there's some significance to that. And that, right, so I come from a telecom background, telephone number, stuff like that. And there was just another major thing that happened in 2015 is the first telephone number auction happened on December 17th, where a small subset of 833 token telephone numbers were auctioned off. And you know what were the highest price numbers? I think the highest price number went for like $150,000. So we have this realm where we try to, and the other thing that difference between relationship neutral and relationship significant is machines are fine with random numbers. So this is a random number, whatever. That random number is neutral and just as this for a machine. For a human, not the case. So this relationship dimension, the difference between relationships that us humans have versus the zeros and ones that are constitute the inner workings of the machine, I think is a fundamental difference. And it starts like right out of the womb. Because as human beings, we are immediately introduced to a relationship. It usually starts with that spank on the bottom as you're coming out of the womb. And we rely upon that as our fundamental foundation. So anyway, that's part of what I think is going to happen with identity. So we're addressing is we can focus on this gap between relationship neutral machine world and relationship significant. So anyway,
No problem. Yeah.
I'm open to feedback on that. I think that distinguishing this has kind of opened up some new routes for me. So other things that people see for 2020.
Yeah, open source phone where you actually it's not on the app or Google. The primary two contenders being PinePhone, the 5 which come out.
PinePhone shipped in 17.
That's great.
The Braves, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the mass market though. So the people who don't necessarily, you know, so
Yeah, that's like
it'll be end of March.
What was the other phone?
PinePhone and Medium 5. And so those, like the default kind of stock apps are actually going to be kind of based on decentralized technology, like Matrix, like Mastodon. And I think they have the potential, it depends on the adoption rate, but especially because of the apps that they ship with, they have a chance to potentially accelerate a lot of decentralized basic infrastructure because that's what people are first introduced to on this.
Are you saying that you wouldn't necessarily need a phone number?
No, not the phones themselves, but so like the Matrix. If you're familiar with like IRC, for example, or Slack, but like Matrix is like open source decentralized equivalent. So like one of the primary apps that ships with iOS phones is one of those basic clients for like SMA-based technology is going to be all packaged. Sure.
I think it'll overtake a lot of communications with those IRC type checks.
Yeah.
It'll replace texting and things like that. So that's telecom for the future. Especially with that.
But even if they form a Wi-Fi mention on their cellular net,
Right. Yeah.
There was some discussion I know a while back, like with the pages of act like a mode. Or so I think because of mode, like hardware chips like they're trying to add that. I think they realized that it just wasn't available for the first version. So but I think they might they're saying they might try it. That's like really speculation. But like another thing, I think is in general open source hardware also playing I know the UMICCA has been almost like a Raspberry Pi, but it's like a little hard. They went open like 2013, but they're still stuff like that has been trying to, at least for a long time, is kind of finally trying to get the first solutions done. But things like that. Also for Pi, actually the actual texting application and the Ryan Matrix application at the same time. So like replacing text in the exact same application. Things that they're purple, so like pigeon uses. So a lot of stuff like that's the same. Yeah, and like there's actually it's actually both their I think it's chatty, right? Chatty.
They changed the name.
Yeah, they actually that's was an issue request to try to get there was some discussion on trying to get actual support for pigeons add-ons. So that way you can review like there's like a Pigeon 8 called Google Chat, which is now Hangouts. But they're viewing the same messages like those in the same application. So kind of pretty kind of cool ideology for.
Cool. Yeah, so let's, I'm going to switch back to the presentation and just point out another thing that so keep it the continuity here. Okay, so this is where we left off with my assertion that decentralized identity is if that were viable and scalable and adoptable, that would open up decentralized governance and then non-proof of work consensus. And this is, a statement I keep harping back to: identity is the key to the kingdom. But along those lines, this report was published on January the 14th, which is a NIST report on decentralized identity, and it's about I think it's 44 pages of text and then another 20 pages or so of appendix and reference and so forth. And there's a copy of it over there on the table. But I would highly recommend that you look through this, and they did a great job of categorizing different decentralized constructs, both from the top down to the bottom up. And one of the things I was kind of excited about is they mention like IPFS like 8 times. Now, some of it's in the footnotes and so forth, but having NIST start to incorporate IPFS into an official document like this, I think speaks a lot in terms of the viability and the significant, or the workability of that particular construct. So this is just an image that I put in because we tend to think of identity as like this white light that's one thing. We think of identity as like Jay Carpenter, this meat bag sitting here in this chair. But I'm actually a spectrum of constructs and contexts in terms of my identity. And there are times when people have to step in and act on my behalf or for me or as a trustee or an agent. One of those times on December 30th, I was hiking and I did like 2 somersaults back and planted my head in some rocks, and I'm in the emergency room. Well, I was still conscious, but had I not been conscious, then my wife would have needed to step in and basically act on my behalf and serve as my identity. So that's what I mean by kind of a spectrum of identity. So in this presentation in the back, there's a bunch of documents on decentralized identity, and here's an item from IBM. But this item from Microsoft, I think, starts to highlight how Microsoft is really, really focused on this area and wants to be a leader in decentralized identity and get their arms around something that's viable here. So you can take a look at this. I think Eileen has posted this. This is a talk by Juan Benet in 2016. Does a great job of kind of painting the picture of what's ahead for decentralized web and constructs and so forth. That's me, no big deal. But one of the things that Juan talks about in this talk back in 2016 that is now becoming real is Filecoin and pulling decentralized file storage together. And that's not new. Others have done that, but the consensus mechanism of space-time, I would say, is new, and if it actually works, will be pretty powerful. So I think that's about it for the screen sharing. So additional thoughts? What else? I mean, when we were talking about 2019, we kind of drifted into 2020 and beyond. But any other thoughts or comments that we might have missed that any of you think is relevant to talk about? A bit.
I liked your statement about identity being kind of like that spectrum where it's not like, oh, it is a statement about some physical person, but it's more of a statement about your relationships and your like social contract, basically, which is like a much more amorphous thing than just like, oh, is this person with the brain, body, those kinds of things. And a big view for 2019 as well, in another emerging space in artificial intelligence, specifically natural language processing, where they really tackle structuring these really abstract concepts, especially in language, where in order to do translation, you need to understand the essence beyond the words in a very complex higher dimensional space that we don't really understand as humans. And using relationships and identity and what you're okay with, what you're not okay with. Hey, I'm okay if my mom knows I'm alive, but I don't want her to know everything girl, but both of those are your heartbreak data. So it's not really a data question, it's not really a physical question, it's more of a social expectations, which I think that the progress made in the field of natural language processing will lead to innovations in creating effective, vectorized, or computerized representations of those abstract concepts. But of course, has a ways to go.
See, I'm skeptical because to get back to the relationships, everything that, and I'm not an AI expert, but everything that we see where we're trying to get these zeros and ones to dance like as if they're human, whatever human part of those, that dance is happening among the zeros and ones, which are relationship neutral, according to my assertion, is just being added in by humans in the background. So it's sort of like we got this dancing machine in front of us, but what's really making it dance in the AI is a human behind it, if you will.
I think with the AI is there's one paradigm where it's just like very statistical, and then the human basically tells it what to do, and then it handles very low level tasks and just executes what the human asks it to do. But with a lot of these systems, they especially if you look into generative networks or generative adversarial networks, they basically learn constructs. So they take their relationship neutral representation, let's say like an image. And one technique is an image, every number, relationship neutral, it's a huge value, but it could be any image, just as easy for a computer. Then the network looks like an hourglass, where in the middle, it crunches it down into, let's say, it was 20,000 numbers at the front, with every pixel, every color. In the middle, it's, let's say, 100 numbers. So 20,000 crunched down to 100, and then the second half of the hourglass takes those 100 numbers and expands it back out, and you train it to take the input image, crunch it down to a more relationship significant representation, and then train the second half to expand that out into the same image so you can train it. And through doing that, if it's able to take its relationship significant or neutral input, punch it down into something more significant, and then expand it back out into the original output, then it would have learned a smaller representation in which it really integrated the relationships. And now if you took away the first half where you fed it real data and you just fed it random numbers, then it generates faces. And it generates random faces, but they're hyper realistic looking because it learned how to structure the concept of a face and extract that back out. And I think that it's that kind of teaching them how to understand relationships. Of course, they're really not good at context yet because that's just a very hard problem. But, and of course, it's like a long way to go before they could understand something like a human relationship or like human social structures that are so spread out over time. But when it comes to, but progress is being made in helping them understand these abstract concepts and making them understand relationships, especially with larger amounts of data.
So you're saying that based on what you know, Avik, that the state of the art, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, is that programs, machines, algorithms, whatever, let's say could take 10 relationships that were put into the system by humans and actually expand that out to like 12 relationships that were with 2 new relationships that were generated by the machine or the algorithm or program. Is that what you're saying, or
What do you mean
no?
by relationships?
Well, to go back to what I'm talking about in terms of relationship neutral, relationship significant, assuming that in the program, the logic, and so forth, there is no value or inherent relationship significance among the zeros and ones. What I'm saying is that if that could be broken, or if that could be expanded upon, that there would actually start to be introduced into a 0-1 logic system some sort of relationship significance.
Think about it like compression. And it is, they use these networks for compression too. So for JPEG compression, they use our human perception to reduce the number of zeros and ones by quantizing them in ways that computers find significant because they have to store less bits. But for humans, we can see the relationship, and the relationship doesn't really change very much to us, even though it takes up half the size. So it's like a compression mechanism where it reduces the number of bits by sort of working with what humans are looking at. But the interesting aspect with the AI is compression's been around for a while, where you've been able to use hard code relationships into algorithms to be able to reduce file size for machines in ways that humans still can see it. But they add the second part where not only do they learn good effective small representations instead of making it algorithmic, but they're also able to deconstruct that in ways where you can feed it in random inputs and it can still deconstruct images of faces and the sort. So
Yeah, well, we could have, I'm interested in having a more in-depth discussion on that and maybe seeing some examples like in a presentation.
No, it's a lot. Yeah.
But I'm still, my bias is that, you know, what you might be talking about, what you might be seeing is more like a prediction based upon statistical analysis, which has, in my view, no significance, no emotion, no relationship, really essence to it. But so anyway.
And I'd be interested in learning more about, you're more familiar with how these systems actually get used, and if an identity system was to be rolled out, what, like, it can't be, oh, I'm pretty sure that his wife has the ability to speak on his behalf, and like AI is, operates on statistical assumptions, and arguably everything operates on statistical assumptions, but in laws you really don't want that.
Well, I assert, and I love Cindy, but I assert there are times when she does not operate on statistical assumptions.
So it may not be a good solution for identity to be the foundation of like a government wouldn't want to say like, so there's a 50%, there's like even a 0.01% chance of like someone being able to legally speak on, like, it's hard to defend. So it may not be a good situation based on my
and sweetie, if you watch this, there are times when I do not work on statistical assumptions either. So it's human.
Yeah.
So the only other point before we kind of wrap this up, and I think this has been a great conversation, is because there seems to be a lot of interest in merging artificial intelligence with blockchain in this decentralized construct. And, you know, that's another whole, hour-long conversation, I think. But that is, let's say, kind of a buzzword, trendy thing that's happening as well. And, I think that's something that it would be fun to play around with, especially in this environment where we could stand up some, blockchain, decentralized, DLT, Tupelo, which is not blockchain, and see if we could add in some AI functionality. I think that'd be really, really interesting. So.
There's also lots of black kind of like ASU law against governance of technology society. In forums like that, a lot of talk about AI being culturally biased within its algorithms and how one
Mm-hmm.
determines it, ferrets it out, or uses it advantageously. But when you're talking about
Relationship neutral.
relationship, sometimes the relationships may actually be baked in inadvertently or overtly, if that's the opposite.
Yeah.
There's big ethical discussions around AI and its potential or actual and determined cultural biases.
Yeah. That's yeah, and that's my assertion is, you know, you might think you're looking at a pure machine, but underneath the hood of that machine is a human that's moving the levers and stuff. So another way.
In that space, like, hey, how do we know what code was running on the Uber car when it hit that lady? And saying, hey, when we're regulating these very powerful systems and looking at decentralized, provable ways of holding these digital systems accountable in the court systems and these cars and so on. Yeah, really, a lot of power is unlocked.
Yeah. Good stuff. I'm going to stand up front just to wrap this up. So thank you. I think this is an awesome conversation. Appreciate everybody being here tonight, contributing. Next session, February 26th. It's not set yet, but I put out some invitations to have that be on Hyperledger and talk about the Hyperledger Global Forum that's coming up March 3rd through the 6th down in Phoenix. So we'll see what happens there. I'll go out on a limb again, but March will probably be Dash. And hopefully we'll have some folks from Dash here. And then and I haven't made this invitation either, but at some point in the next few months, I would love to get Jason Gordon and start talking about Nori, which is a carbon removal trading platform that's starting to get some pretty amazing coverage and traction and so forth. Jason is the co-organizer of this blockchain. So anyway, any questions before we wrap it up?
Not a question, but just sort of a quick comment. There was a recent bill proposed. Basically, the act is known as the Virtual Currency Tax Fairness Act of 2020, which is basically amends the tax code such that any transaction such that your gain is below $200, you don't have to report to the IRS, which could potentially, if you're interested in helping make it easier to spend virtual cryptocurrency, that kind of thing. Do research, probably represent.
Cool.
Just one question.
Sure.
This next Wednesday, is there another?
No, I need to switch that. It's going to be the fourth Wednesday of the month because of the variability of the 5 Wednesdays of the month. So, but yeah, it's considered the fourth Wednesday of the blockchain session. And again, on Saturday afternoons, 2 o'clock, we have tax sessions here. And yeah, so thanks for your participation. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Forgot about that bill.
So,
That tax bill. That was interesting.
Talk about zero knowledge proofs and federated learning.
Federated learning